I'm Michael Montero for Boxing Monthly, and you're watching the Neutral Corner for the week of June 4th. You know, have you subscribed to Boxing Monthly lately? Have you gotten the new issue? If you haven't, then you're a horrible person, and I don't like you. Well, last week's episode sure stirred the pot, didn't it? Look, I apologize for the audio issues. Should be worked out now. And hopefully, you know, we won't deal with that again. Things are in flux at the studio. I'm putting things together. I'm building different things. I just finished putting down floors and started doing the baseboards this weekend. So just bear with me. You know, there's going to be little trials and tribulations as we go. This thing's a work in progress, but there's a lot coming up in the future with the Neutral Corner. So sit tight and just stick with me, guys. I had a pretty good 3-day weekend. I hope you guys did too. Enjoyed your Labor Day. I actually went to a baseball game yesterday with some of my friends. Here's a picture from the game. That's it's me. That's my boy Jeff. It's my boy Zach and his kid Isaiah. And Tiffany took that picture. It was a lot of fun until I got out to the parking lot and realized I didn't have my phone with me. So I must have dropped my phone at the game or something. And I called the lost and found at the stadium. They haven't seen it. So yeah, somebody walked off with my damn phone. Joke's on them though, because I downloaded a secure app where nobody can open the phone unless they punch in a certain code. And nobody in the world knows what that code is except for me. So good luck. Have fun with my phone, assholes. I guess I'll go get a new one. Real quick, before we get into the news and notes, I want to give a shout out to my boy, B-Boy Evan. Run into this little guy at all the fights, him and his dad. Great people, great family. I'll see you guys at the fights at StubHub this weekend, where I am actually not covering that fight. Tiffany, my girlfriend, has requested that one fight a year we go just as fans. So I actually bought some tickets to that fight. I'm going with a crew of like 14, 15 friends. We're going to be hanging out the fight. I will be drinking beers because I won't be working. So I'll see you guys there at the fights. It should be a lot of fun. Let's get into some news and notes. So yeah, bad audio aside, last week's episode of TNC is now infamous because of the demographic talk. Now, I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time talking about that issue this week. Of course, I got a lot of backlash on that video and a lot of attention from, you know, certain kinds of attention I didn't want. It wasn't designed, that video wasn't designed for that reason. I wanted to address one more thing about the demographic, and I'm going to leave it alone. I'm sure we'll come back to this issue in the coming months and years as certain things develop, but guys, Doug Fischer, whom I respect more than maybe anybody in the boxing business, just for his opinions on certain things. When it comes to racial things, as I've said before, I respect his opinion more than anybody in all of media, in sports media. And his mailbag last week addressed the demographic thing beautifully. Better than I ever could, because I'm nowhere near as intelligent or as articulate as Mr. Fischer. Let me read to you a portion from his mailbag last week, where he was responding to some of these questions about the demographic. An African-American boxing fan that I respect asked me what I meant by the demographic. In parentheses, by the way, it's not a term I coined. I was content to continue calling that segment of boxing fandom assholes. And he says, via Twitter earlier this week, my answer, which had to be brief thanks to Twitter's word limit, was, and I quote, racially biased African-American fans that are uninformed jerks. A lot of you guys out there saw that tweet, and Doug got a lot of heat for it, so he was addressing that tweet and some of the other stuff he's tweeted out in this answer. I continue. The definition ruffled some feathers, which is understandable. Some African-Americans don't believe black people can be racist. I disagree. Some feel it's okay to be racially biased or flat out racist if you're black, because of the oppression that Africans/African Americans have suffered in the US since slaves were brought over. Again, I disagree. Racism is wrong, period. Fuck yeah. I continue. And some were really frustrated because some non-black fans who happen to be assholes labeled them as part of the demographic. And I get that. But the bottom line is that if you're a black fan whose boxing opinions are not racially biased or not racially motivated, you are not in the demographic. If anyone says you are, in a weak attempt to win an argument on social media or message boards, when you clearly are not, they are part of a different demographic. You see what Doug did there? I agree with everything Doug says here, word for word. I continue with this brilliance. If you're a black fan who knows his shit and isn't rude or needlessly antagonistic, you are not part of the demographic. You guys hearing this? One more paragraph. The demographic is not made up entirely of Floyd Mayweather or Andre Ward fans. Those boxers have plenty of fans from other ethnic groups that are every bit as annoying as their black supporters. And they even have some rational fans. This is something I've been trying to get across to people forever. I continue. The demographic is easy to spot. They only offer their opinions when supporting or defending a black boxer or when ripping a non-black boxer. They're going to support, defend Al Heyman and the PBC to the bitter end, and they're going to crap all over HBO, Top Rank, Golden Boy, Main Events, or any other boxing organization not controlled by Al Heyman. They literally see the boxing world and probably the rest of the world as black and white. Black is good, white sucks. A member of the demographic will tweet that Golovkin has never fought a decent opponent, and in this very next tweet, proudly defend Deontay Wilder's opposition. You get the picture. There, ladies and gentlemen, that brilliantly sums up what I was trying to get across last week, but I am nowhere near as good of a writer or as articulate a human being as the great Doug Fischer. That's exactly what I was trying to say. And for the record, I'm speaking for him, but I can tell you straight up and down that Steve Kim agrees with those sentiments as well. There you have it, the demographic clearly defined. So all of you people who unsubbed for me last week, I hope you see this portion and you come back when you realize what I was saying and, more importantly, what I was not saying. Real quickly, wanted to touch on this Triple G Canelo thing, or the thing that isn't happening, the Canelo-Golovkin fight this year. One thing I forgot to mention, I think in my my video I did in that a couple weeks ago in the last episode of TNC, I forgot to talk about Canelo's lawsuit with All Star Boxing. I'm not going to get into the whole long story. I hate when boxing people sue each other. There's too much of that shit going on, and there's more of it coming because of some of the positive drug tests recently. But there's a promoter in Florida, All Star Boxing, that tried to lure Canelo away years ago, and they are currently suing Golden Boy because they say that Golden Boy owes them money, blah, 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 blah. That, I think, is a big underrated reason why this Golovkin fight isn't happening right now. Because Golden Boy knows that's a huge moneymaker and they don't want All-Star Boxing getting a chunk of that. So they're trying to settle their case and handle all that business before they get on to the Gennady Golovkin business next year. So I forgot to mention that, just wanted to get that straight. Real quick, I talked about drug tests. Lucian Bute popped for his last fight, which happened a while ago. It came back with a positive test for a banned substance related to steroids. Bute has requested that his B sample be examined, and those results from the B sample are not back yet. But as it stands, Bute busted red-handed. So that's all the news and notes right now. Let's get into the review of last week's action. Lots of fights all over the world last week. Saturday, the 28th in the Philippines, Donnie Nietes scores a fifth-round retirement over Raul Garcia. And he now, this was, I believe, the 8th defense of his 108-pound WBO title that he won back in 2011. And he's now slated to have a third fight with Moises Fuentes on September 24th at the StubHub Center here in Los Angeles. That's the only fight that's slated for that date and venue so far. So you got to figure they're going to throw some other fights on that card. I'm not quite sure why they're fighting again. I'm not maybe you guys can clue me in if there's a mandatory situation or something, but Nietes fought Fuentes twice already. They fought in 2013 to a draw in the Philippines, and then they fought again in 2014 in the Philippines. That for the time, or that at that time was for the vacant ring title at 108, and Nietes scored a 9th round TKO. So now he's the man in that division. He's the lineal champ. He's got that ring title. He's had it for a couple years. WBO title, which he's held for 5 years now. He's clearly, I think, the top guy at 108. You'd have to say based on accomplishment and everything else. And I do know that, their 2 fights together before Nietes and Fuentes were very, very good, entertaining, fun fights. So the 3rd fight, hey, makes a lot of sense, and they're bringing it to the United States. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and a lot of the Filipinos will be able to come out. There's a huge Filipino population here in Los Angeles, and they'll be able to come out and see a Filipino fighter. That should be a lot of fun. In Poland, Krzysztof Wlodarczyk scores a 4th round knockout over Kai Kurzawa. Dropped him once in the 3rd round, and then again in the 4th round. It was a pretty brutal KO. Wlodarczyk is another top cruiserweight. Been saying it for a while, guys. Cruiserweight has a lot of talent, and Showtime in the past has been willing to show a lot of cruiserweight fights, especially back. Don King had a couple cruiserweights back a few years ago, and Showtime was very, very cool about showing some of those fights. But HBO has never bought in to the cruiserweight division, and that's a shame. I think with HBO's current affiliation with some Eastern European fighters, namely Kovalev and Lomachenko-Golovkin, there's others, and the promoters that they're working with, who are neutral in a lot of ways and are willing to work with other people, especially people overseas, I think HBO needs to pony up some cash and start bringing over some of these cruiserweight fights. Maybe not bring the fights to the United States, but at least start televising them and showing them, so that maybe one of those fighters, because it's a very, very deep loaded division, and a lot of those guys now are based in Eastern Europe, and I think they make for fan-friendly fights. And Murat Gassiev, who scored a Knockout of the Year candidate a couple weeks back, he's a stablemate of Gennady Golovkin's. So if he continues to build himself up, I think he's now in a mandatory position for a title. I think it might be one of Lebedev's titles. If that fight can be made, HBO really needs to show that. I think it'd be an amazing co-feature to a Golovkin fight, right? So someone needs to start ponying up money. I don't know if Showtime will, because Showtime is pretty much in the Al Heyman business right now. And although Heyman has worked with Eddie Hearn recently, with Anthony Joshua, who they just signed to a big deal, I don't see them necessarily working with some of these other promoters and airing them on Showtime. So it's going to have to be HBO, but I'd really love to see HBO start showing some of these fights, because there's just talent in that division, man. In Scotland, Ricky Burns scores an 8th round TKO over Michele Di Rocco for a vacant 140-pound title. Now Ricky Burns is officially a 3-division titleist. Guys, I like Ricky Burns. Good, honest, hardworking fighter. Quality guy who's carved out a good career for himself. But sorry, this title, it's bullshit. And look, I work with Boxing Monthly, a British magazine. I have a lot of British followers, a lot of British fans, buddies of mine from England that live here in LA and go to fights. So they're very proud of what's happening, the British takeover in boxing, right? It's like, when the Beatles took over American music. It's happening in boxing right now. There's so many world champions, but this title is bullshit. The WBA, you guys know how I feel about the WBA. They suck. But Burns, Di Rocco shouldn't be in any title fight. And Burns has, I can't remember, I want to say he's won 3 of his last 6 coming into that fight. So it's one of those things where I understand people are excited, but let's chill out right now. 140 is stacked. I think Burns could give a lot of guys a tough competitive fight, but the brass of that division, he's not gonna beat those guys. So here in Arizona, David Avancian scores a unanimous decision over Shane Mosley. Thank you, boxing gods, for this. Shane Mosley does not need to be fighting. He's one of my favorite Twitter accounts to follow. If you're not following Shane Mosley, you need to, because he is an amazing troll and he sends out some hilarious shit, but shouldn't be fighting. Shane Mosley's son fought on the undercard. That's who should be fighting, not Shane. So I'm glad he lost this fight. For Vacant, the Russian fighter, who I believe is based in America now, I think he moves into a mandatory position. Yes, he's now the mandatory for the WBA 147-pound title that's being fought between Sean Porter and Keith Thurman in late June, I think June 25th. So he's going to be in a title shot soon. And I think he could give the winner of that fight a good push. He's not a guy that punches very hard, though, so I don't think he's going to be able to keep them off. Give them good rounds, take them deep into a fight. But if somebody like Thurman, if Thurman beats Porter, that's a huge if. I'm starting to lean towards Porter in that fight. But someone like Thurman, if you can't keep him off of you, he's a pretty good, powerful puncher at welterweight. I think he could stop this guy. In San Antonio, Texas, there was a PBC on Fox Sports 1 card. Guys, I'm just going to admit it, I didn't watch it. This card just looked horrible. Just top to bottom, just looked horrible. And, there was really no boxing on here in the United States, at least on, network TV. So for this fight, you'd figure I'd turn it on or something, especially when I was working in my house, putting down wood floors and I just needed some noise. I put on music. I didn't put this fight on. I'm not trying to be an anti-PBC guy, but the headliner of this fight was Miguel Vasquez and Eric Bonet. And he beat Bonet by decision. They were both coming off losses. For Bonet, he's now lost 3 in a row. Miguel Vasquez is the antithesis of the prototypical Mexican fighter. He's just not very entertaining. And, who wants to see him? I don't. That's what's up. Sunday, 5/29, May 29th, Tony Bellew scores a third-round TKO over Ilunga Makabu from South Africa. Pretty devastating KO too, man. Bellew showed some power in this fight. But Makubu, maybe that's how you say it, Makubu, isn't a very good fighter. I mean, we talk about the cruiserweight division, which is hot. It's got some good fighters. Makubu is not one of them. This was for a vacant WBC cruiserweight fight, or title. Again, guys, sorry. This title means shit. I know I'm going to upset some of my British followers this week because I shit on Ricky Burns' title. I'm going to shit on this Tony Bellew title. This is for a vacant title. It was 2 guys. Tony Bellew is a top 10 cruiserweight, but this other guy isn't. So they shouldn't be fighting for a title. But now he does have a title. And if we could get further unification, Lebedev unified 2 titles a week or 2 ago. So now if we could get some of these other guys, if we get these top guys to keep fighting each other and unifying a division, and we get some of these prospects like Gassiev, Alexander Usyk, right, the Ukrainian kid. We have some of these guys that keep building themselves up and working their way into title shots. And we're going to have a fun division here. There's a lot of fights to be made. Tony Bellew was down in the first round. And the thing about him, he lost, was dominated by Adonis Stevenson in 2013 at light heavy. Since that time, he's moved up to cruiserweight. He's 7-0 since then as a cruiserweight. But who has he fought, right? He looks better at cruiserweight, I think, than he did at light heavy. But we need to see him step up the opposition here, especially, that's the thing, sometimes these titles can be a blessing and a curse. Well, it's a blessing you got the title, you can start making some real money now. But it's also a curse because you have that title, you're set to a higher standard, and you got to start finding top guys. And that's going to be an issue with this guy coming up. This year, he gets a pass. He's still a prospect. He shouldn't have a title. But Anthony Joshua, starting next year, going to have to up the opposition. Callum Smith got a win on that card, with the Bellew card. He's now 20-0 with 15 knockouts. The Smith brothers, man, that's just a tough boxing family right there. You figure he's got to be working his way into a title shot pretty soon. So that's all the action from last week. Let's get into a preview of this week's action. Friday, June 3rd, it's PBC on Spike from Florida with Cuban Rances Bartolome fighting Mickey Bay. This is the first defense of his IBF lightweight title that Bartolome won last December. Mickey Bay's been in some pretty entertaining fights. Rances Bartolome, none. So this is another one where, guys, again, I'm not trying to be anti-PBC. I'm very, very quick to say when they get it right, when they put on a fun, good fight. I've covered several of their fights already this year. I covered several last year. I'm more than fair to them. This just isn't a very good fight. The same night, there's also free boxing here on the West Coast. It's the LA Fight Club, headlined by Ronnie Rios, who's an entertaining fighter. Those cards are free. They're streamed online. If you want to watch some boxing Friday night, turn on Spike TV and watch the PBC fight, that's cool. But if you're getting bored, or even while you have it on your TV, you should be streaming the LA Fight Club. If you have Estrella TV, that's the Spanish language network, then you can watch the LA Fight Club live on TV. But if you have a smartphone, a computer, laptop, whatever, you should be streaming this. ringtvlive.com. Just go to Golden Boy's site. All the information's there. Should be a lot of fun. They're always fun. But Saturday, June 4th in Montreal, Artur Beterbiev makes his ring return, going up against Ezequiel Osvaldo Maderna of Argentina. Beterbiev been a little bit of a disappointment. Beterbiev better get active, right? He hasn't fought since last June. It has been a whole year, basically, since the guy fought. So, man, it's already June. Holy shit. This is crazy. It's been a whole year since he's fought. He went pro in 2013, towards the end of 2013, and had a few fights. Had 4 fights in 2014, and already was way stepped up in just his second year as a pro. But only fought twice last year, and not against the best opposition. So Beterbiev, who was looking like one of the, could be, one of the top guys in the division, his stock has dropped, right? It's like if you were watching his stock on, the New York Stock Exchange, it kind of dropped. He needs to get it going again, you know what I'm saying? So hopefully he can look good against this Argentinian opponent. These guys that come from Argentina, you just don't know what you're gonna get. Some of these guys come over here and they look really, really good and surprise people. A lot of them come over here, most of them come over here with really shiny, nice records of what they've done down there against a bunch of farm boys and shit. They come up here and look like opponents. So we'll see. In Liverpool, Liam Smith, talking about the Smith family. He's going up against a fighter from Montenegro, defending his WBO junior middleweight title. The fighter from Montenegro, I can't even remember his name. All I remember is the only guy on his resume that I recognized was Felix Sturm. He was knocked out by Felix Sturm in 2013. And Felix Sturm doesn't knock out people. So expect Liam Smith to get a big, impressive knockout win here. And expect them to try to use that highlight, I don't know if it'll be a highlight reel type of knockout, but that impressive, dominant knockout win and the defense of that title to try to lure Canelo Alvarez into a fight. There's actually some talk, and I'm bringing this up because it's real talk. It's legitimate. There has been some speculation between Canelo and Smith's people. Now, Smith does hold a title at 154 pounds. I don't know if Canelo would go back down to 154 to fight him for that title. If he did, Smith would have to come over here to America. I know it's only 1 extra pound, and Canelo could probably do it, but to go back down 1 pound right now to fight for the WBO title, I just don't think it would make any sense. I know Canelo gave up his WBC middleweight belt, but he still has the ring title and the quote-unquote lineal championship. I think that middleweight lineage has been destroyed since Miguel Cotto fought Sergio Martinez. It's just destroyed. But he technically has those titles. To drop those to fight Liam Smith, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. I don't see it happening, but it is a potentiality. It is. It's a potential thing. So that, say what you will about that one. I think that would be a bad move on Golden Boy's part, but they haven't made many good moves lately. Last but certainly not least, this Saturday at the StubHub Center, Francisco Vargas, winner of last year's Fight of the Year, going up against Orlando Salido. Vargas, for those of you who don't know much about him, because he kind of just came onto the scene, big time. He was on that Cotto Canelo undercard last November, and he got up off the canvas to defeat Japanese fighter Takashi Miura, who's a legit good fighter in one of the better fights I've seen in the last few years, one of the better fights I've seen live. I was covering that ringside. It was right up there. Some people had Glowacki Huck as the fight of the year and had that fight second. I had them like 1A and 1B. But really, really great fight. Vargas has a good style. He's 23-0 and one draw with 17 knockouts. Orlando Salido, boxing fans know this guy. Know him a lot. And he's really a favorite among Mexican-American fans here in California, Arizona, pretty much the whole Southwest region of the United States. And of course, fans in Mexico love him because that's actually where Salido started his career. I want to say he was like 15 years old when he went pro. No amateur career. He learned on the job. And he took several losses when he was coming up. But he's lost some and he's won some over the years, but he's fought everybody. And he's one of these guys that truly learned on the job and just a true consummate grizzled veteran, a consummate professional boxer. He is 43-13 with 3 draws, 30 KOs. Do not let that record fool you. He's had a very good, distinguished career. Went pro in 1996. He's now, I think, 35, 36 years old. You compare that to Vargas. Vargas went pro in 2010. He's 31 years old now. Vargas went pro a little bit later in his career. He had a good amateur career. Vargas was at the 2008 Olympics. He was a representative for Mexico. This is both guys' first fight at StubHub, which I find really interesting, especially for Orlando Salido. I can't believe he hasn't fought at StubHub yet. Last year, Salido fought Roman Martinez twice. He got a draw and then a loss. We all know Roman Martinez, I think, is going up against Lomachenko. I can't think of the date, early June. So Salido hasn't looked as good recently. He's been dropped a few times. And I think it's, you have to favor Vargas in this fight. But Vargas hasn't fought in front of this kind of crowd at StubHub. There's going to be a lot of people there who are more familiar with Salido, so I think he's going to be the crowd favorite because the fans there just know him. So Vargas is it's not going to be hostile territory, but there's going to be, he's going to have to win over the crowd a little bit with some of the fans there that haven't seen him yet. And in Salido, Vargas is facing the most experienced and just battle-tested opponent of his career. So unless there's a freak knockout in the first couple rounds or something with Salido really cold, I expect this fight to go rounds. I think that Vargas will ultimately stop Orlando Salido, but I do think Salido's going to get his punches in, and I think there's going to be blood. I think both of these guys are going to bleed. Vargas bled a lot in that fight last year that he won over Miura, and we've seen Salido bleed plenty of times. So I do think that Salido will probably get off the canvas once or twice, but ultimately he's going to be stopped. Probably a mercy stoppage from the ref or maybe even the corner. But he's going to go out in his shield, man. And you never know. He could drop Vargas. He's got power, and he could drop Vargas at this stage. And Vargas might have to get off the canvas again. A couple things have to happen for this fight to become a really, really good fight. What I hope we don't see is a one-sided beatdown of a just younger, fresher guy beating up an older man. I hope there's a danger that this could turn into that. I don't think we're going to see that. I'm knocking on wood here, my IKEA desk. I don't know if this is real wood, but I'm hoping that doesn't happen. From what I'm hearing, they scaled this venue down, I think, to hold 80% of capacity or something, like 3/4 of normal capacity. And they're expecting a sellout. So I think you could expect a good crowd of like 6,000 or 7,000, something like that. They may have actually opened it up to more seating. I'm not quite sure. But StubHub for boxing, normally I think it's about 8,000 or 8,500 as a sellout. So I think you can expect 6,000 or 7,000 fans. And man, I'm telling you, one fight a year, my girlfriend says we have to go to as fans. And I picked this one because I think the weather is going to be just right. I got family coming into town. My cousin's coming into town. I'm taking him to the fight. A lot of my friends are going. Like I said, there's going to be about 14, 15 of us going in a group in a couple of rows together. So we're going to tailgate. We're going to be having fun. If you guys are going to be there, hey man, hit me up. Let's have a beer together. Because this one, I'm not working, man. So I'm going to enjoy this one as a fan. Something about StubHub, when the sun comes down just before the main event, there's just a magic in the air in that place, man. But there is a really, really good undercard for this fight. There's Gabe Rosado's on the card, Julian Ramirez, Christian Gonzalez, some of the top Golden Boy prospects that you're going to see that have kind of graduated from that LA Fight Club series and are going to be challenging for titles in the next couple years. They're on that card, and that's the undercard, and it's going to be streamed live. It's going to be on Ring TV Live, and it's going to be, I think, on Golden Boy's website. So look out for that. I'll tweet out the information. Doug Fischer and Beto Duran, they are commentating. They're doing the commentating for that streamed undercard. So, man, that's going to be fun, right? That's going to be a great way to warm up, man. So turn that stream on and see those fights. You know, you got a couple of fights overseas to check out earlier in the day. It should be a really fun Saturday of boxing. But let me know what you guys think. Like, share, subscribe. You know the deal. And I'll see you guys at the fights.